When a narcissist realizes you've become too dangerous to manipulate, they don't admit defeat. They don't walk away gracefully, and they certainly don't respect your growth. Instead, they begin plotting something quieter, sneakier, and psychologically more invasive than ever before. Not because they love you, not because they care, but because control over your emotions, your mind, and your perception of yourself is all they ever wanted. And when that control slips away, they panic. Because you're no longer the person who danced for crumbs of their attention. You've become something else. You've become untouchable, and that terrifies them. This moment, the shift in dynamic is invisible to most, but to the narcissist, it's a red alert. You're no longer emotionally available for their games. You don't rise to their provocations. You don't chase their approval. You're calm now. You're grounded. You speak less. You watch more. And that new silence isn't weakness, it's power. Because silence to a narcissist is danger. It means their words are no longer effective. Their chaos no longer penetrates. Their charm falls flat. And suddenly, they're faced with a version of you they never prepared for, the healed version. Carl Jung once said, "You meet your destiny on the road you take to avoid it." And for the narcissist, their destiny, the thing they fear most, is meeting someone they can't control. Someone who sees through them. Someone who holds a mirror so crystal clear that they can no longer run from their own reflection. And when you become that person, when you embody your own light, your own clarity, your own truth, they try the one trick they believe might still work. They imitate your transformation, not in a sincere way, not because they've finally done the inner work, but because they've observed you. They've studied your awakening like a predator watching prey evolve, and now they want to use your growth as a disguise. So they start to speak like you. They talk about healing, about boundaries, about trauma and awakening and learning lessons. They may even go to therapy, read spiritual books, or share deep-sounding quotes online. To the outside world and to the untrained eye, they appear changed, transformed, enlightened even. But inside, nothing has shifted. The shadow still reigns. And you, having done the real work, the painful, lonely, gut-wrenching work of healing, sense something is off. Their words are right, but the energy is wrong. Their timing is perfect, but their actions feel hollow. Something about them feels calculated. That's because it is. This is their final trick, the one they pull when all else has failed. It's called mirroring your evolution. The narcissist believes if they can become what you've become, or at least appear to be, you'll let your guard down. You'll let them back in. You'll mistake their imitation for inspiration. But they're not inspired. They're desperate. Because once you've stopped being emotionally reactive, once you've taken your power back, they no longer have a script to manipulate you with. So now they try to manipulate you through alignment. They fake healing to regain access. But this false persona can't last.
Why?
Because narcissists can't tolerate the vulnerability that real transformation requires. They can say the words, but they can't feel them. They can mimic compassion, but they can't live it. They can imitate humility, but they can't embody it. Because to do that, they'd have to confront something they've spent their entire lives running from, their inner emptiness. And this is where Carl Jung's work becomes prophetic. He believed that healing requires a descent into the unconscious, a confrontation with the shadow. But narcissists don't descend. They deflect. They avoid. They externalize every flaw and blame every scar on others. So no matter how well they perform their new enlightened identity, eventually the cracks will show. Their ego will flare. Their entitlement will resurface. Their patterns will repeat. And you'll see it, because you've seen it all before. But this time, you won't fall for it. You won't defend them. You won't try to save them. You won't confuse their effort for evolution. Because now you understand what real healing looks like, and this isn't it. You'll start noticing the inconsistencies, the passive-aggressive comments wrapped in spiritual insight, the subtle put-downs masked as concern, the way they still center themselves in every conversation, even when pretending to be interested in your growth. It's all there, just polished, just hidden beneath a layer of psychological makeup. And the moment you call it out, or worse, ignore it, they'll do what they always do. They'll turn it against you. You're too sensitive. You're not as healed as you think. I guess you haven't really changed. They'll accuse you of the very thing they're guilty of, because projection is their final weapon. And yet, unlike before, it won't work, because you don't need their validation anymore. You don't need to be understood by someone who refuses to understand themselves. You're done playing emotional detective. You're done explaining your worth. You're done negotiating with chaos. This is the true breaking point, not just physical distance, but psychological detachment. And once you arrive here, the narcissist begins to lose all power over you. You see, they never bonded with you through love. They bonded with you through control, through trauma, through emotional confusion. And when you stop offering your confusion, their illusion collapses. Now they're left with the person they were always trying to avoid, themselves. And that is the moment they'll try to destroy your peace. Not because you hurt them, but because you reminded them of their own unhealed pain. You became the mirror they can no longer avoid. And now, they'll try to shatter that mirror by any means necessary. They'll go to others. They'll rewrite the story. They'll become the victim. And in the court of public opinion, they'll build a case against your name. One post, one conversation, one lie at a time. But here's what they still don't understand. You no longer care, because true healing is silent. It doesn't defend. It doesn't explain. It doesn't beg for truth to be seen. It simply walks away. Not from pain, but from patterns. Not from them, but from the parts of you that once tolerated them. Because now you see clearly. You see the loop. You see the manipulation. You see the performance. And more importantly, you see yourself, not through their lens, not through their projections, but through your own reclaimed vision. And that, to a narcissist, is the ultimate threat. A person who sees clearly, feels deeply, and no longer needs their approval to feel whole. Because now, you've become something else entirely. You've become your own source. You've become sovereign. You've become dangerous, not because you seek revenge, but because you can no longer be fooled. And in a world built on deception, truth is the most dangerous weapon of all. Now that you've stepped out of the cycle, you begin to see the narcissist clearly, not as a mystery, not as a soulmate gone wrong, not even as a villain, but simply as someone trapped in an endless loop of their own unhealed story. But this awareness doesn't make you weaker, it makes you immune. Carl Jung taught that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That is exactly what you've done. You've pulled the unconscious into the light. You've named the trauma. You've witnessed the patterns. You've stripped the illusion bare. And in doing so, you've undone their greatest spell, the belief that you needed them to be complete. But the narcissist is not ready for this new version of you. The version that no longer seeks love in punishment or identity in pain. You don't need to be understood to have worth. You don't need to be believed to be right. Your truth no longer demands an audience. So the narcissist escalates. When mirroring your healing fails, when pretending to be what they never became doesn't bring you back. They shift their strategy again. They attempt character assassination, not to destroy who you are, but to destroy how others see you. Because if they can't control your reality, they'll try to control your reputation. They tell stories. They twist facts. They call you unstable, ungrateful, disloyal. They say you were the toxic one, that you changed, that you're not who you used to be. And here's the part that stings. They'll be convincing. Because they've spent years studying your weaknesses, collecting your vulnerable moments like trophies, waiting for a moment like this. So when they smear you, they use just enough truth to make their lie believable, just enough facts to make the fiction feel real. This is the second phase of the trick. They weaponize your healing journey against you. They say, she thinks she's better than everyone now. He's acting like a guru. They got into all that therapy stuff and now they've lost touch with reality. They're obsessed with their past. What they mean is, they outgrew my control. Because that's what all of this really is, an emotional war over control. But here's the divine irony. The more you refuse to defend yourself, the more powerful you become. The narcissist expects you to react. They want you to argue, to break no contact, to panic, to post your side, to beg others to see the truth. But you don't. You move in silence now. You let the lies echo into the void, unanswered. Because you understand what the narcissist doesn't. Truth has a vibration. It doesn't need performance. It doesn't need an audience. It just needs time. And over time, your stillness becomes proof. This stage, the smear campaign, is designed to isolate you. But if you stay grounded, it does the opposite. It reveals the narcissist to others. Because when someone has to destroy your name just to feel okay with themselves, they are not healed. They are hiding, and people begin to see, not all at once, but slowly. Your consistency speaks. Your peace speaks. Your lack of reaction becomes a kind of evidence. Eventually, the narcissist burns the very bridges they were trying to control. Because their energy cannot sustain the illusion. Their anger cannot remain hidden forever. And their need for admiration always exposes itself. So you wait, not with bitterness but with wisdom, not for revenge but for alignment. Because you know now, people don't need to be punished. They only need to be revealed. And when someone shows the world who they are, all you have to do is let them. This is the evolution the narcissist cannot understand. You've moved from trauma response to conscious creation, from survival to sovereignty, from reaction to observation. You don't chase love anymore. You embody it. You don't cling to relationships anymore. You discern them. You don't fear abandonment anymore. You embrace solitude. And all of that, every piece of your growth becomes armor. Not the kind that hardens you, but the kind that protects your softness. You become dangerous to the narcissist because you can't be guilted anymore. You don't take the bait. You don't explain your worth. You don't ask, why did they do this? Because now you know. They did it because they had to. Because without control they unravel. But you've risen, and your rising isn't loud. It's holy. You rise by choosing your peace over their chaos, by choosing your integrity over their approval, by choosing your truth over their comfort. They tried to break you, but all they did was trigger your transformation. Because their betrayal wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The beginning of the unraveling of all the lies you once believed. The beginning of trusting your own intuition again. The beginning of loving yourself without conditions. And yes, it hurt. Healing always does. Letting go of someone who once felt like oxygen feels like suffocating at first. But over time you realize you weren't breathing, you were drowning. And now you've come up for air. And in that fresh air, in that clarity, you realize something else. You don't even hate them. You pity them. Because you've faced your shadow, and they still run from theirs. You've owned your flaws, and they still project theirs. You've evolved, and they're still performing. And deep down, you understand. It's not your job to fix them. It never was. Your only job was to heal yourself, to choose yourself, to remember who you were before the gaslighting, before the trauma bonds, before the illusion. And you did. That's why they tried that one last trick. Because you are no longer reachable through the same wounds they used to access you. You are no longer the same person. You're not playing the same game. You don't live in the same frequency. And from this place, from this altitude, they can't follow you. They will try. They'll recycle every tactic. They'll hoover. They'll future fake. They'll cry. They'll rage. They'll plead. But it's all noise now. Because the part of you that used to respond to that noise, it's gone. She grew up. He woke up. They healed. And in that healing, the spell broke. So if you find yourself doubting, questioning, missing them, remember this. You don't miss them. You miss who you thought they were. You miss the version of the story where it wasn't abuse. You miss the potential. But potential is not love. Intensity is not intimacy. Control is not connection. You didn't lose a soulmate. You lost a story. And now you are writing a new one. One where peace is normal, not suspicious. Where silence is sacred, not scary. Where love feels safe, not performative. Where your worth is known, not debated. This is your liberation. This is your awakening. This is your return to self. And the narcissist, they will feel it. Not because you told them, but because you stopped needing to. Because that's the real closure. Not them apologizing, not them changing, not them finally seeing you, but you finally seeing yourself and never unseeing it again. They felt it before they saw it. The shift in your gaze, the calm in your voice, the lack of urgency in your replies. You didn't say anything dramatic. You didn't announce your departure. You didn't rage or fight or plead for change. You simply stopped playing the game. And that broke everything they built. Because the narcissist didn't build a relationship. They built a control system. One that relied entirely on your confusion, your emotional reactivity, your loyalty to illusions. The more you doubted yourself, the stronger they felt. The more you bent to accommodate their moods, the more power they held. You were never loved, you were managed. Trained to respond to their needs. Silenced when you had your own. Kept just hungry enough to keep begging for the crumbs they called affection. But the moment you woke up, the moment you saw the script, the whole system collapsed. Not just for them, but for you. It was as if a fog lifted. Suddenly memories took on new meaning. Moments you used to think of as intense or passionate, now reeked of manipulation. All the coincidences were actually patterns. All the apologies were just resets. And every time you thought they changed, they were just getting smarter about hiding who they truly were. This is the unraveling Carl Jung spoke of. When the unconscious becomes conscious, the illusion can no longer sustain itself. And so you left, physically maybe, but more importantly, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You unhooked, and the narcissist felt it like a death. Because you were no longer their supply. You were no longer their mirror. You were no longer their emotional puppet. And what was once a predictable source of control had become a mystery they could no longer crack. So they tried again. That one trick. That performance. That imitation of your healing. They used your own words, your own philosophies, your own insights. Not because they understand them, but because they want to stay relevant to you. They watch from afar now, or perhaps they lurk in shadows nearby, pretending to be healed, pretending to have changed, pretending they were never the problem. They become poets of healing they've never lived. They become preachers of growth they've never earned. And if you're not careful, the performance might feel convincing, because they've learned what moves you, what resonates with your soul, what you long to hear. They recite those things now, word for word, but not from the heart, from memory. They aren't healing. They're studying you, still, even now, still trying to find the entry point back into your world, still hoping you'll mistake mimicry for transformation. But this is where you become truly dangerous, because you see it now. You recognize the tone. You read the energy. You feel the hollowness behind the words. You sense the fear behind the eyes that used to intimidate you. You don't need to argue. You don't need to expose them. You don't need to correct their lies, because you've realized something extraordinary. The truth doesn't need protection. It only needs embodiment. And you have become the embodiment. You walk with your truth like it's oxygen. You live in your peace like it's shelter. You radiate wholeness that cannot be faked. And the narcissist, they are allergic to wholeness, because wholeness cannot be seduced. It cannot be guilted. It cannot be bullied or tricked or bought. It stands firm. It speaks without sound. It moves without force. And this is where they fail, because they have become noise and you have become stillness. And stillness, true stillness, is more powerful than any trick they know. So what happens now? Now that they can't reach you, now that the last trick has failed, they begin to deteriorate, not externally necessarily, but internally, because without someone to control, they are left with their own chaos. Without someone to blame, they are left with their own shame. And without your light, they are forced to sit in their darkness. But here's the truth, they won't stay there long. Because narcissists don't heal in the dark. They hunt for new light, new mirrors, new empaths, new hearts to colonize. So they move on, and you might be tempted to warn the next person, to speak your truth, to try and prevent what happened to you from happening to someone else. But you don't. Not out of fear, out of wisdom. Because you've learned, people don't believe warnings, they believe experiences. And the next person will not see the narcissist the way you do. Not yet. They will have their own path, their own awakening, their own pain, just like you did. And so you let go. Not just of the narcissist, but of the need to be understood. You live now. You create now. You connect now. Not from survival, but from truth. Not from fear, but from wholeness. And something beautiful begins to happen. You begin to attract people who are not confused by your clarity. People who are not threatened by your boundaries. People who don't see your stillness as distance, but as depth. People who don't need to manipulate you to feel worthy. People who feel like peace, not potential. And this is the reward of the journey. This is the fruit of the silence. This is the miracle of choosing yourself. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not dramatic. It's slow, soft, steady, safe. And for a nervous system used to chaos, it might even feel boring at first. But stay. Let the quiet love you. Let the simple hold you. Let the consistent become sacred. Because you are not the person you were. You are no longer seeking intensity to feel alive. You are no longer chasing fire to prove you can survive it. You are no longer afraid of being alone because you are no longer lonely in your own presence. And this is where Jung's wisdom returns once more. He said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. You have awakened. You no longer look to others for your reflection. You no longer need someone else to validate your worth. You've built your own mirror. You've become your own source. And that is what the narcissist never expected. They never thought you'd make it out. But you did. Not because you fought harder. Not because you were smarter. But because you were willing to face the thing they never could. Your own pain. Your own patterns. Your own shadow. You alchemized your suffering into wisdom. You turned your wounds into windows. You found beauty in the broken. And now you are free. Free not because they let you go, but because you let go of needing them. Free not because they changed, but because you did. Free not because the story ended, but because you stopped needing to rewrite it. You let it be what it was. You learned what you needed to learn. And now, you rise. With grace, with truth, with a soul that has walked through fire and come out clean. You rise, not for revenge, but for rebirth. Not to prove them wrong, but to become who you were always meant to be. And in that rising, the story changes. Because you're no longer the wounded one. You're no longer the survivor. You are the sovereign. And your sovereignty, it can't be manipulated. It can't be stolen. It can't be faked. It just is. And that is the one thing the narcissist never prepared for. The day you'd become too powerful to play with, too aware to be confused, too whole to be owned. That is the day their game ended, and your life truly began.